So let's take Joseph, the dreamer. Stay with me here. He's the dreamer. And he's going to rise up, and his brothers and his family, they're going to bow down, and they're going to see him and all that. First, he's sold into slavery, but he bounces back. Now he's in charge of the household. Now he's set up, lied about, slandered. Has anyone ever done that to you? And now you know where he ends up? Prison. Prison. The young man who did nothing wrong, who followed his God, just like you. And yet everything seemingly keeps going wrong. You know, sometimes God lets you hit rock bottom. And you know why? So that you'll discover that he is the rock at the bottom. He's the one that's there. He's the one that's with you every step of the way. And there's only one way to learn that. And that's to be in that place. There's no substitute for it. And it says here in Genesis chapter 39, verse 21, 22, this is almost hard to believe. This is remarkable. He says, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness, granted him favor in the eyes now of who? The prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. What? Do you see a pattern here? That no matter how many times God allowed life to kick Joseph in the face, God just kept letting Joseph rise to the top. He rises to the top of his servant's house, and now he rises to the top of the prison. What about you? In that place where you are that you never planned to be. That job, that family situation, that group of people that somehow you're with. Do you rise to the top or do you sink to the bottom and pull others there with you? You know, what about you? You know, instead of complaining about life, which you can't change, why don't you start seeing every area that God allows you to go into, not as you being the victim, but as a place that you're supposed to rise up to the top and stand for him. Rise up for the top and be an influence for him. You know, the Lord can bless you wherever he allows you to go. Why don't you start realizing that he has a plan in all this? And quit with the drama, and quit with the theatrics, and quit with saying that 2020 is over, and start asking, why am I here, and what am I supposed to do, and how does God want to use me now to be an influence and help me rise to the top? Because that's what we should be spending our time doing right now. And it says, though, that he went and then he had a dream. He didn't have a dream. Others had dreams, and he interpreted dreams. And it came to the point where he interpreted a dream that the king had had. And he said, hey, when you get out, this is going to be my way out, right? When you get out, I'm going to get out of here. Remember me. Remember me when you get out. So the guy gets out after Joseph interprets a dream for him, right? And what does he do? Forgets about him. So now we see Joseph's desperation. And you know there will be times in your life where you've been kicked in the face enough where you will feel desperate. It's hard to say this, and you just got to believe it by faith, but you need to embrace the process. God has not forgotten you. Other people may. Other people may have forgotten you. It seems that you've done so much and nobody recognizes it. Nobody gives you any credit. Nobody seems to even remember that you're alive, that you're a part of whatever it is. Life just moves on. And we can get a feeling like Joseph possibly had of desperation. The Bible tells us that he was actually forgotten and left in the prison for another 2 years. The chief wine steward who went out didn't remember Joseph. he forgot all about him. Why? Because he only cared about one thing, and that's what you find in most people in life, right? They only care about themselves and what's happening with them. So Joseph was forgotten. And I've got to tell you that it may look like your situation is never going to change. You're going to get to that point in life. But in a split second, God can completely resolve it. I've known in my own life, and I've heard of other people as well. I know there was a time in my life where God really gave me a vision for certain things that were going to happen, and it took a long time, and some of that now has happened, but there's more to come. But I remember something that God told me a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it. And it was something that got me through in the toughest of times. And when he told it to me, he said, be very sure that you remember the words that I'm telling you, because if you don't remember it, it's going to seem hopeless. And these were the words. It was, in the moment when it seems like things will never happen, suddenly they will. In a way that is miraculous, in a way that is powerful, hey, you've got to have faith. Right now, you need to have faith. Your situation may look possibly even bleak. You may not see how the dreams that once God put in your heart, the vision that he gave you for your life, you may be at the point where you say, I just don't see how it's possible that could ever happen. But the God that is the miracle worker is the God of the impossible. What's impossible for man is possible for God. This is the end of the story because we're just about out of time, and I can't give you all the details, but let me tell you basically what happened. They had a severe issue. There was a dream that the king had, and suddenly when nobody could figure out what it meant, suddenly this cupbearer remembered, oh yeah, there was this guy named Joseph. Oh yeah, there was this guy in the prison. Oh yeah, he interpreted some dreams. Let me ask him. And they did. And Joseph was able to interpret it, and it helped prevent a severe crisis from a severe famine that was about to take place because they were warned ahead of time. And this is what happened. Suddenly, one day, because of that famine, Joseph's father, who thought Joseph was long dead and had mourned over his death for years, sent his brothers, that's right, the same brothers, the same ones that threw him in the pit, the same ones that left him for dead, the same ones that ruined his life seemingly, correct? Joseph's father sent his brothers to Egypt to get food. And lo and behold, who was the one who had risen up, who God had risen up to take care of all the affairs for Pharaoh? He was like second in command. Who was the one that they did not recognize, but they had to go to, and they gathered around, remember this dream? They gathered around him and bowed down before him, hoping for his favor. Bam. You see, you need to understand something. When Joseph was given the dream by God, there was no way on earth that was going to happen. In the current circumstances of who Joseph was, where he was in life, where his brothers were in life, there was no way on earth. There was no way that his brothers were ever going to gather around him and bow down before him. But this was the vision. And it wasn't a vision because Joseph wanted to lord things over his brothers. It was just the vision that God had given him, that he was going to do something great with him, that he was going to raise him up to a prominent place. And he saw this vision and he shared this dream, and everybody else hated it and nobody else saw it. And there was no way that would ever happen if it wasn't for God allowing several kicks to the face to drastically change the circumstances of his current life and put him in an entirely different place. And the dream was fulfilled. The dream was fulfilled. You see, you got to get it this morning. Wake up, quit pouting, quit being upset, and rise up wherever you are. Because nothing has happened to you that God doesn't have a plan for. You should just be asking why, what, and what am I supposed to do now? And keep moving. Keep moving. Keep rising. Keep looking for God's direction. And some of you, you hear that story and you go, oh, that must have been sweet. I mean, here are these brothers. Oh, my goodness, they left me for dead. And now they're bowing around, and I have the power to destroy them. Revenge. Revenge is sweet. But you know what? There's something else that goes along the process when God really works in a person's life and brings them to that point. You see, Joseph, when he was still the young man with the coat of many colors, if you would have told him the things that were going to happen, and if you would have told him what was going to end up happening to his life, and then this scene was going to come, Joseph in that day probably would have said, ooh, and when it does, they're going to pay. But you know what? God had done so much in Joseph's life, and Joseph realized it. And he got to that point, and his brothers, it says, when they saw that it was Joseph, they were terrified. Wouldn't you be? But he said to them, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many should be kept alive as they are today. God has allowed you, my friend, to go through things in your life so that you can help others. God has allowed you to experience pain so that you can help ease the pain of others. God has brought you through all of these things for a reason. Your hardest days give way to your greatest victories and your greatest accomplishments. Will you wake up and realize that God has not abandoned you, that God has not left you. He has a plan. As Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, not to hurt you, but to prosper you. Do you understand that God has never allowed anything to happen to you? It's all happened for you. There is a reason that he has, and it's a journey that you must take. Kicks to the face and all. Get up, look up, and move, and have faith.